Hey nerds! In this live stream, we review and do a spoiler breakdown and discussion of Loki Season 2, Episode 6, titled Glorious Purpose. It is written by Eric Martin and directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
So, we have reached the final episode of Loki Season 2, Episode 6, and this time Loki learns the true nature of glorious purpose as he rectifies his past in this gripping finale. So, Nathan, what do you think of this episode? This is a really, like they said, gripping episode, so I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. This is, I think I posted yesterday or earlier today. Like we said a couple weeks ago, I'm in Kenya, so I don't know what time it is for most people who are watching this. That this might be the best thing that Marvel has done, and I'm glad that I waited for the finale. And I was a little conservative with my ratings because I can give this the full rating when we get to it later on. But yeah, it's really good writing. Not just really good writing, really good acting.
Yes.
By Tom Hiddleston and the rest of the cast. But of course, the show is called Loki, so he's like the center of it all, and kind of bittersweet at the end, but also made sense. Even if you started to get lost in all the timey-wimey stuff, it makes sense. And it kind of, I was watching Tom Hiddleston on Jimmy Fallon, I think earlier this morning, and he because the actor strike is over, so he was like the first guest who was able to talk about his project after the actor strike on late night television. He was saying that it was like the culmination of like 14 years of work, and it really is. And it could be the ending of that character, or it could be in an ending, and you really could go either way depending on how the things shake out with Jonathan Majors. But yeah, it was really satisfying. I mean, looking at him from all the way from 14 years ago, was a very different person 14 years ago, and I'm sure Tom Hiddleston was a very different person 14 years ago as well. But it's a really great arc for a character. I can't say more great things about the show. It was a great production design. They actually, having seen the Marvels yesterday, and I actually did like the movie. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning. Even some of the special effects were better in places in this finale than even in the movie that came out just yesterday. So production design has always been great in this show, but with some of the visuals that it's not even just the visuals that they came out with. I mean, they were executed very well by the graphics department, the CGI department, but they're just the concepts, and I'm not sure whose idea they were to come up with those concepts for the some of those final shots with Loki, but they were like beautiful like metaphors rendered in graphics. So yeah, it was an exceptional finale to a show.
Yeah, I really feel the same way. I think that it's definitely something that was very gripping, just like the spoiler-free logline says. But also, acting was really top notch. There's one scene that I'm gonna get to. I found it like really amazing. I think that the story itself, the plot line itself, was really cool, and it also felt like, as you were talking about this, it felt like very Greek mythology, and it's very interesting in that sense. It's like Greek mythology tied in. It's like this, and also the title kind of like very Greek mythology ish. So in that sense, it's just really cool. I think that yes, there are some actors that weren't as featured as much, but again, like you said, the end of the title of the episode is Loki, so it has to be focused on Loki himself. So I did kind of feel bad that there were some characters that were kind of left out a little bit, but at the same time, it makes sense for the whole thing. And also, it was 58 minutes long, and it really didn't feel 58. I think they really needed every single minute, Ashley, to kind of tell the finale here. And yeah, it's definitely a really good thrill ride in terms of kind of like you have to tell the full story. And I think that also, we'll get to the plot point later on, but it's definitely well done than it was with one of the other Marvel movies that they were involved in. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, I think it was still a very, very good execution of the whole thing. I think that, like you said, Nathan, they stuck the landing. So I think overall, yeah, really, really good impression on it. So, having said all that, what do you think? What's your rating for this final episode?
Yeah, so like I said, I was a little conservative in the last couple episodes. So I guess I can, since the season was so well rendered and the finale was so great, I can give this the 10 that I can give this theater rental. I think especially if you've been following the ride for this character for the last 14 years, like Tom Hiddleston said, it's a great finale, and you definitely would want to rent a theater for it, especially because there's like so much that happens in this finale. Like there's like so many things that he tries before he ends up where he needs to end up.
Yeah.
And he makes the decision that he needs to make.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use my words very carefully, not saying anything about make any value judgments about the decision that he makes. But like, yeah, it's a really good ending. So yeah, theater rents are worthy. 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I will have to say. Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. It's 10. I think that in terms of, I've been giving 10s as well in separate episodes. I think last week I think it was like a 9, but I think the previous ones I got like 10s there, because of the action, because of the cliffhanger was like episode 4 was a 10 for me, because it was like, wow, that's amazing. So I think that for me, definitely it really picked up after the third episode. I mean, all the episodes were great, but then it really picked up after they went back in time in 1893. That's when it was like, okay, with Victor Timely, and it was like this kind of, then it really kind of went really good. And I think that it's very enjoyable to kind of watch it as a kind of like a longer than a full-length movie. And it's definitely rewatchable because it does, and it also gives some really important stakes and consequences. Now, whether or not those consequences translate to other MCU properties, we don't really know how it translates, but at the same time, it's self-contained enough that there are hints that there's going to be maybe some ramifications of what has happened, what he has done to kind of get to in the larger MCU scope. So yeah, 10 will be appropriate for this this episode. So any other thoughts before we get into spoiler territory?
No, this is the most impossible episode to talk about without spoilers. So yeah, we should just get into it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you like what we talk about Loki and about other content like this, please like, share, subscribe for more of this. And without further ado, we're going to get into spoiler territory. Okay, so let's go to the end of episode 5. So this is basically the end of so it's like the screenshot was pretty much the end of episode 5, but then they start off the final episode with this where he's time slipping, and he goes back to where he was right before the temporal loom exploded. And so, but even before this, the intro, they went backwards with the intro, which is really cool. They actually did that. So it's like you kind of saw that this is going to be a little slightly different type of thing when they did the intro backwards. So so this is where he returns to the point in time before the loom explodes. Victor Timely is preparing to launch the throughput multiplier, and again, the same thing happens. He got spaghettified, and then he did it again and again and again, and you're like, what's going on? It's kind of like what from the first Doctor Strange movie, and you're like, oh, this is pretty interesting.
Dormammu, I'm here to bargain. Yeah, over and over and over again.
Right.
Although it's like that, but it's also more like Groundhog's Day, Like in the first Doctor Strange movie, he was just being insistent and defiant of Dormammu, whereas and trying to wear him down. Whereas this is more like Groundhog's Day in that he was trying to learn and trying to fix things. He was trying to learn and fix things and trying to solve the problem. And we eventually get to a point where he was like, okay, we're not figuring this out fast enough. So I have to learn as much as I can, and it took several centuries to learn all the quantum physics that he needs to learn, so that he could solve the problem quicker. So several centuries of learning quantum physics, and they solved the problem, but that doesn't really solve the problem. So yeah, it was an interesting beginning of the episode. That's what I meant earlier when I said that he had to go through a lot of different things before he actually ended up where he ended up. And one of the things is like trying to learn physics and all the science that is in OB's head and also in Victor Timely's head over the course of centuries, and that didn't even work. So he had to go to plan I don't know, 10 million or whatever. So yeah.
Right. So yeah, sorry about that. I think my voice is kind of like losing it a little bit. So just give me 1 second here. You can go right ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, and then after this scene, I guess we skip to the him going back to Sylvie and who remains, going back to that point where he finds that he replays that thing over and over again, because what Victor Timely says is that it would never have worked, even though he spent hundreds of years trying to make it work, because of there's no way to scale to infinite. He said it's like dividing by zero. Anyone who paid attention in math class knows that's undefined or impossible. So yeah, he goes back to the end of season 1 and tries to reason with Sylvie, but Sylvie hasn't gone through the journey that he has gone through, and she says over and over again that you'd have to kill me. And he tries over and over again to try to reason with her, and that doesn't work. And eventually he's like speaking directly to Kang. He says, why don't you ever try to help? And then they have a conversation, sort of like I guess man to man, about the situation. And yeah, and even in this conversation, he kind of drops the way that he was acting at the end of season 1, and he kind of like talks like more normally. It's the most normal performance. It's the most normal like performance he's given for a Kang character in the last couple years, like 3 years that he's been playing these characters. Like at the end of season 1, he was like playing him like Willy Wonka. Of course, Victor Timely is kind of like an autistic, stuttering version of him. Kang was a very intense version of him, and this guy is just like, you know, he after he stopped playing, you know, the impish guy, the impish Willy Wonka guy, when he's like, okay, fine, great, you're ready to have this conversation, because you've obviously done this thousands, if not millions of times over the course of hundreds of years. Now you're actually ready to have a real conversation as adults about what your real options are here. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation between
it felt like he was kind of beyond all that in some ways. It's like, you finally got to this point, great. Like, what are you gonna do? Yeah. What are you gonna do now? And I just found it very interesting, the interactions, and Loki trying to stay one step ahead of him, And
Yeah.
yeah, it was really definitely that interaction between the two were really interesting. And then also what you mentioned about Sylvie, very interesting conversation. It's like she kept up with it too. It's like she kind of knew that he wasn't the same guy. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, she had a sense, but she. I mean, when he was going back and forth trying to fix the throughput multiplier, they got a sense that something weird was happening, and they even mentioned to him. They kept looking at him because things are going too quickly, and they said this is too quick. How did you learn all this quantum physics so quickly? So like people had a sense something was wrong, but no, like he didn't really give them a chance to have a conversation about what was wrong. And like and in these scenes, she was single-mindedly trying to kill he who remains. So she like while she felt like she might have felt something was off, it's not something that she would have examined because like her purpose was at that point at the end of season 1 trying to kill him so he could stop her, so she could stop her misery and her being chased. But yeah, this conversation is really interesting for a couple reasons. Like I said, what him dropping all the act of like the Willy Wonka act, but also the fact that this isn't the first time that Loki had this conversation with him, but he who remains doesn't know that. So there's some things that he doesn't know. He's like, is this the first time we had this conversation? And Loki plays it like it was the first time until the end of the conversation, where he actually shows that he can stop time. So he did
Right.
learn that. He did. He could stop time just like he who remains. So he did learn that. So and Loki says, what makes you think we had this is the first time we had this conversation?
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's where he really drops the act and starts talking to him like straightly, like man to man sort of thing. Unfortunately, I mean, in putting it in that terms, in those sort of terms, but like unfortunately, like Sylvie is kind of like not only dismissed out of this conversation, but literally dismissed, where he just like puts her somewhere else so they can have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Kind of put her in her
yeah,
place in some ways.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
So
Definitely.
so so yeah. After this conversation, he goes back to Loki. So sorry, goes back to the beginning of season 1 and tries to have a conversation with Mobius, because he's built a real friendship with Mobius, and he trusts his perspective on the world and the universe. And Mobius tells him this story about, how does he make decisions, like tough
Right.
decisions. And he recounts this story about a hunter who hesitated in the Black Sea when there was a variant who would have killed 5,000 people who shouldn't have died.
Right.
And obviously it's a story about himself, and Loki actually catches on to the fact that it was about himself, and Renslayer was apparently the one who shook him out of it and killed the 8-year-old boy. Yeah, it was an interesting story. It was an interesting story for a couple of reasons. You find out that he was a hunter before, which you didn't know. You got a sense maybe he was, but you knew Renslayer was a hunter because we saw her. We saw her in the first season capture Sylvie. But yeah, and apparently his hesitation led to the deaths of a couple hunters. So yeah, it was an interesting story for a couple reasons. Like I said, you get a little bit more backstory of their long relationship, Renslayer and Mobius, but you also get the title of this an examination of the title of this episode, which is Glorious Purpose, which was the title of the first episode of the first season,
Right.
which isn't a thing that shows do very often. But I was actually thinking about that. I think the only reason they can get away with it because it's in another season. I think they have to be unique within the season, but they had and also or they had to get permission from the Writers Guild to do that. But it makes sense because it's like a loop, right? It's a loop.
Right.
He started thinking he was going to have Glorious Purpose because the Loki that we're dealing with was the one who was plucked from the Avengers, and now he actually understands Glorious Purpose. And Mobius, I think he said that purpose is mostly about burden than glory, more about burden than glory. And it takes him, I think, a bit more time to actually figure out what he wanted to do, what he wants to do, even though he got this very sage advice from Mobius. He has to go talk to Sylvie for a bit
Right.
before he makes the decision that he makes. So yeah.
Right. It's very. This scene was probably encapsulates a lot of their relationship together. I mean, they've had some great scenes together, but this was like really, really top notch. This is like tens all around because I think the acting was good, the interaction was good, the quote was really memorable because it's like you can't. It's about burden more than glory. So this is like excellent writing in some ways too.
Yeah.
It's like really, really good writing to tie it all together from the very beginning. The backwardsness of the like going back in time, going to point to point to point, significant points throughout season one. Really brilliant move by them by them to kind of going back in that direction because because he's always searching. He's searching. Not only is he searching for a moment in time where he can change things, but also finding his purpose as to why he's here in the first place.
Yeah, and you also get a sense that from this conversation, he starts to accept that he can't have what he wants because we found out in the previous episode that he does. Once Sylvie kind of breaks him down in the bar,
Right.
it gets to why he really wants to do this. He doesn't want to be alone, but he has to be alone. That's what the bittersweet thing of it. It's like
this is the Greek mythology. This is the Greek mythology
Yeah.
part. It's like very mythical in that sense, which is really really cool in that way because it's like you are making this kind of purpose. It's about burden.
Yeah, he's basically Atlas, but not just for a world, for for a multiverse.
There you go.
He's holding everything on his back. Yeah, there's definitely Greek mythology, but when we get to it as well, there's also Norse mythology because we get to see a thing that's mentioned a lot in previous movies of Thor movies, but also even in the Captain America movie, we get a mention to it, and we actually get to see it in this show. So yeah.
So
Norse mythology, yeah.
As we move on, what happened to her? She didn't appear that much, in this episode. And,
it's very unclear whether or not. So, like I said, it really depends whether or not this is an ending, or the ending. If this is the ending, this is probably the last time we will see her. But they give it a sense where she might be killed by Elias, but. Maybe not because she doesn't look scared. She looks scared for a second.
Yeah.
But the last shot on her face is determination. And if the last shot is determination, then maybe she figures out a way. She did help Kang, or He Who Remains, or whatever version that is, win the multiversal war, right? So like maybe she did help him. And if you remember, he said that the way that he won the multiversal war was by a large component of that. So maybe she has some sort of idea to get out of this. So maybe.
Right, exactly. So we'll see what happens with her. I mean, they kind of left it open ended, and yeah, we'll see. And this is the kind of the final part where he's actually taking the initiative to go into the loom, trying to stop the loom. And all his mythical robes are coming back out. He's doing his magic. He's playing the gods.
It's not even like as ornate as the crowns that he built for himself before. This is a more humble. I mean, the crown, the horns are larger, but it's more humble. It's more like this looks like iron, and not like gold. Like, and it's like a workman's kind of crown. And his even his garb, even though it's green, it's not as ornate as some of the things that he's made for himself in the past.
Right.
It's like, this he's the god or the king at the middle of the multiverse, but it's with a crown that's heavy, that he fashioned for himself. So yeah, this was a great scene. This is what I was talking about by the special effects being spot on and great, but like not even just the special effects. Like I said, the metaphor of thinking about how, like the previs metaphor of having him actually weave the threads of the multiverse and hold them and bind them together, and even his cape becomes threads of the multiverse, and he has to kind of sit, like I said, in the middle of the multiverse and hold it all together in the tree, the Idrisel tree of life. He's at the center of it, holding it together. So yeah, it was a really beautiful metaphor, and it was very beautifully rendered. So
Right.
yeah,
And this was the final scene, basically, the end scene of episode 6, where he's kind of like weaving all the different branches together.
yeah. This was I think this is his smirk after we see the very end. In the very end couple scenes, there's like after he takes his seat on the crown on the throne, there's like this thing that says after, and then
Right.
we see the TVA after, and the TVA after mostly is about like tracking down Kang variants so that they don't create the war. And they mention the Kang that was defeated in Quantumania,
Hmm.
and at the end of this. But what also happens is that Mobius decides to retire, or at least see what his life looks like.
Right.
And this also goes back to the conversation that he had with Loki earlier about why he hesitated when the boy was playing with his brother. I guess subconsciously he was thinking about his own sons.
Hmm.
But yeah, he stands there. He sees the house and the boys, and Sylvie comes by, and she bids him adieu, and he
Hmm.
says that I'm just going to wait here and let time pass. And then that's when they cut back to this. So I don't know if he can hear all the things, all the
Right.
multiverse, but that sounds like he heard Mobius say that, and he smiled a little bit.
Right.
And yeah, that's the end of the show and the series. And like I said, this is a it was a very cathartic and satisfying ending to Loki. So if this is the last time we see the character, it's I think it's fine for me.
Hmm.
I think at a certain point stories have to end. So it's fine if this is the ending. If they undo this and they do something else, it has to be set. It has to be worthy of undoing this, because I think this is a great sacrifice for him.
Right.
And he actually, especially when you start from where he was so selfish, and he was like, I have glorious purpose because I should be ruling over people, and he's ruling, but his rule is more of a burden, and he's sacrificing for not just people in Asgard, not just people on Midgard or Earth,
Hmm.
but he's sacrificing for everyone in the multiverse. So
Right.
trillions and trillions of people, he's holding it all together. So
Yeah.
alone
Exactly.
in
Exactly. By
solitary.
himself. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
any other final thoughts? Because I think you kind of summed it all up pretty well overall. So I think that, yeah, this is definitely still number one in terms of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, and I think that
Yeah,
whether or
and
not,
like
yeah,
I have to think about all the scenes over the last like 15 years or so. But yeah, this is probably the best, some of the best in all of Marvel. Really, it's really good. It was really good.
yeah,
It's
I'd say so too.
really good
Yeah.
writing, like you said, that
Hmm.
speech with Mobius, in which we call it, almost as good as the what is grief
Right.
it's, line in WandaVision. So top tier Marvel, really.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully this leads to kind of like a resurgence for them, because people been down on them for a little bit, but we talked before this live stream started, was that last year we had Wakanda Forever, which is a
Yeah,
great movie. This
yeah.
year
And
we've had
this year we had Guardians of the
we had
Galaxy,
Guardians
which
of the
is also
Galaxy 3, which is another great movie. I wouldn't want to say it's great, but it's still good. And then, Quantum Mania was gonna, and then we'll talk about the Marvels tomorrow. But at the same time, I think that they're hopefully with the writer strike, the actor strike over, that they can really start promoting stuff. They can really kind of, and then the story and the content is kind of speaks for itself. Hopefully,
yeah,
hopefully that's the case.
and it looks like they're giving themselves a lot of breathing room next year. It's
Right.
probably to reset a little bit, and also to just see where the Jonathan Majors thing is going to go, to see whether or not they need to make a pivot
Hmm.
for 2025. But yeah, they're only releasing one movie left next year.
Exactly.
I'm not sure how many. They released a schedule on Friday, pushing everything except for Deadpool
Deadpool 3,
into
yeah.
2025.
Yep.
So who knows when we're going to get another Avengers movie? But there are a lot of hints at the end of Marvels that we can't talk about because I don't want to spoil it here. but we will talk about it tomorrow. So there are some exciting things that happen in that movie that hint to where they're going to go, and they have an extra year to kind of catch their breath. I mean, the last couple of years have I'm sure would have stumbled it, made anyone stumble. It made me stumble a bit. I'm trying to reset things in my own businesses, so
Right.
I'm glad that they're giving themselves some breathing room to kind of reset and rechart their path, even if it's taking the path that they had planned, but like strengthening it.
Right. Right.
Makes sense. So yeah, we
Yeah.
get one movie next year, and if it's more like this, and the rest of it is more like this, I'll be very very happy to
Yeah.
cover this. This stuff, and it won't be a drain at all. So
Yeah,
so
I think that they definitely oversaturated a lot. I think that, but there's still some quality content that's still out there. Even in Phase 4, Phase 5, so far. So you shouldn't. I think that people shouldn't bash it because I think that if they give it a chance, like Ms. Marvel. Ms. Marvel is a really, really good show. I think that it accentuates a little bit more. Once you watch the Marvels, you'll find out what I mean.
yeah,
So, but in any case, I know we appreciate kind of like I've been appreciating kind of like the journey that they've gone on. Yes, they've had some ups and downs, but I think that it's hopefully they're back on the upswing with this and also with the Marvels, and we'll kind of see where it leads
yeah,
us.
yeah.
So, if you like our conversation, please like, share, subscribe for more content like this. And like Nathan said, we are going to be reviewing the Marvels next, so we will see you in the next one. All
And
right,
check out our previous reviews as well for this.
exactly. All right, take it easy. Bye.